Her name was Destiny Watson. At 23, she was a certified nursing assistant with dreams of becoming a nurse. On February 7, 2023, she stopped at a gas station on St. Stephen's Road in Pritchard, Alabama. It should have been routine, just another Tuesday evening errand. She never made it home. When Destiny pulled into that gas station, she had no idea she was driving into a trap. No idea that her ex-boyfriend and his current girlfriend had arrived earlier. No idea they had positioned their vehicle to block any possible escape. No idea that death awaited her the moment she stepped out of her car. This wasn't a random act of violence. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was a cold, deliberate execution designed by two people who knew her. One who once claimed to love her. Moses Richardson, 22, had been involved with both women. Adrianna Gossett, 26, couldn't accept that Richardson maintained contact with Destiny. The solution they devised wasn't to talk it out or move on. Their solution was permanent. Their solution was murder. The evidence would later reveal everything: how they planned the attack, how they chose the location, how they waited for Destiny to arrive, how they trapped her, how Richardson fired the high-powered weapon multiple times, ensuring Destiny Watson would never again pursue her nursing career, never again light up a room with her humor, never again be described by her cousin Gladys Douglas as the sweetest cousin. What drives someone to help their ex-boyfriend kill his new girlfriend? What twisted logic convinces two people that murder is the path back to being together? What happens when jealousy, possession, and rage converge into one horrific moment at a gas station in Alabama? The story of Destiny Watson's murder isn't just about the crime. It's about the lives shattered in its wake. It's about a family who lost a loving daughter with a promising future. It's about a community faced with brutal violence, and it's about a justice system tasked with holding the perpetrators accountable. In Mobile County, Alabama, law enforcement moved swiftly. Within 24 hours, both Richardson and Gossett faced charges of intentional murder. But the details of their capture, the evidence secured, and the legal battle that followed reveal complications that extend beyond a simple arrest. What you are about to witness is the unfolding of a case that demonstrates the devastating consequences when relationships turn deadly, when jealousy overtakes reason, and when premeditation leads to an innocent life cut tragically short. If this is your first time joining us at True Crime Case Tapes, make sure you click that subscribe button right now. This channel delivers deep analyses of real cases that expose the human elements behind criminal acts. Hit the notification bell too. You'll want to know immediately when we release our next video exploring cases that demand our attention and understanding. Destiny Watson deserved to live. She deserved to pursue her nursing career. She deserved better than what awaited her at that gas station. Let's understand what happened and why it matters. Long before February 7, 2023, before her name would appear in news headlines across Alabama, Destiny Watson was known for something else entirely: her profound capacity to care for others. Born in 2000, Destiny had just celebrated her 23rd birthday before her life was cut short. As a resident of Mobile County, Alabama, she had established herself as someone who didn't just talk about making a difference. She made one every day through her work as a certified nursing assistant. Destiny's choice of profession wasn't accidental. It was the foundation of her future plans. Working as a CNA was her first step toward becoming a full-fledged nurse. Each shift, each patient interaction, each moment of providing comfort to those in need reflected her deliberate path toward a career built on compassion. She could light up a room with her humor and kindness, her family members recalled. This wasn't just the obligatory praise that follows tragedy. This was the genuine essence of a young woman who approached life with warmth and purpose. Her cousin, Gladys Douglas, spoke of Destiny with particular affection, remembering her as the sweetest cousin. The description points to someone who maintained close family bonds, someone who was valued not just for what she did professionally, but for who she was personally. While specific details about Destiny's education remain limited in public records, we know she successfully completed the training required for her CNA certification. This achievement represents hours of study, practical application, and dedication, qualities that define Destiny's approach to her goals. By all accounts, Destiny maintained a balanced life, She worked steadily as a healthcare provider while nurturing relationships with family and friends. She carved out time for personal development alongside her professional responsibilities. Her routine reflected someone with clear priorities and the discipline to pursue them. What makes Destiny's story particularly poignant is the absence of traditional risk factors in her life. There were no documented struggles with substances, no history of harmful relationships or concerning behaviors. Instead, her trajectory showed a young woman investing in her future with optimism and determination. Her coworkers and patients would have experienced firsthand what her family already knew, that Destiny brought more than technical skills to her role as a CNA. She brought humanity. In a healthcare system often criticized for its impersonal nature, Destiny represented the ideal, a medical professional who saw patients as people first. The cruel irony of Destiny's murder lies in this contrast. A woman who dedicated herself to preserving and improving lives had her own life deliberately taken. A caregiver became a victim. Someone who worked to heal became someone who could not be saved. When we talk about what was stolen on that February evening, we're talking about more than just the remaining years Destiny should have lived. We're talking about the patients who would never receive her care, the nursing career that would never reach its full potential, the family moments she would never again enhance with her humor and warmth, the contributions to her community that would never materialize. This loss extends beyond the Watson family. It represents a broader societal deprivation, one less compassionate healthcare worker in a world that desperately needs more, not fewer, people like Destiny. If you're finding this story moving, take a moment right now to share this video. Destiny's story deserves to be known, and by sharing, you help ensure that her life, not just her death, becomes part of the public record. Hit that share button and help us honor who she was, not just how she died. To understand the events that led to February 7th, 2023, we need to examine the complex web of relationships between three individuals: Destiny Watson, Moses Richardson, and Adrianna Gossett. At 22 years old, Moses Richardson lived in the Maryvale community in Alabama. What distinguished Richardson wasn't his profession or his aspirations. It was his position at the center of a dangerous romantic triangle. Court records and investigative findings reveal that Richardson maintained simultaneous relationships with both Destiny Watson and Adrianna Gossett, creating a volatile, emotional situation that would eventually explode into violence. Richardson's background included trouble with the law. At the time of Watson's murder, he was already on probation for a previous charge, a fact that would later impact his bail status after his arrest. This wasn't a young man making his first mistake. This was someone with an established pattern of legal infractions who now found himself caught between two women. What remains unclear from public records is how Richardson justified his dual relationships to either woman. Did Watson know about Gossett? Did Gossett believe her relationship with Richardson was exclusive? These questions highlight the personal deception that often precedes more serious acts of violence. Adrianna Gossett, 26, from 8 Mile, Alabama, became the catalyst in this tragic scenario. Unlike Richardson, Gossett didn't have a widely reported criminal record before her involvement in Watson's murder. However, investigation details reveal something more concerning: a history of confrontation specifically targeting Destiny Watson. Witness statements and prior police reports documented at least one incident where Gossett had brandished a firearm during an altercation with Watson. This wasn't merely jealousy expressing itself through harsh words. This was intimidation, escalating toward violence. The warning existed in plain sight. The relationship between Gossett and Richardson appears to have been marked by intense possession and control. Whether Richardson encouraged this dynamic or merely failed to diffuse it remains part of the psychological mystery behind this case. What's clear is that Gossett viewed Watson not as a person deserving respect and safety, but as an obstacle to be eliminated. As these relationships intensified, the overlap created not just emotional tension but dangerous confrontations. Investigators would later determine that the murder wasn't an impulsive act born of sudden rage. It was the culmination of a building hostility, a premeditated solution to what Gossett and Richardson apparently saw as their destiny problem. The most alarming aspect of this triangle wasn't the romantic complication itself. Such situations occur regularly without ending in violence. What sets this case apart is how quickly the situation escalated to considering murder as a viable solution. For Gossett and Richardson, eliminating a human life became preferable to the more common resolutions: ending relationships, establishing boundaries, or simply moving on. Social dynamics between the three reveal a particularly troubling pattern. Richardson maintained contact with Watson despite knowing about Gossett's hostility toward her. Rather than protecting someone he claimed to care about, Richardson ultimately collaborated in her murder. The betrayal compounds the criminality. Psychology experts who reviewed this case note that fatal love triangles often involve more than just romantic jealousy. They frequently include elements of control, possession, and a distorted view that treats other humans as objects, rather than as autonomous individuals with their own right to life and safety. The progression from previous confrontations to murder represents a failure at multiple levels: a failure of personal restraint, a failure of conflict resolution, and ultimately, a failure to recognize the sanctity of human life. When Gossett and Richardson arrived at that gas station on February 7th, they had crossed a moral boundary that separates ordinary relationship conflicts from the realm of calculated violence. Inside this triangle, Destiny Watson's only crime was her connection to Moses Richardson, a connection that Adrianna Gossett could not tolerate, and that Richardson himself ultimately betrayed in the most profound way possible. If you're finding this analysis of human relationships valuable, take a moment now to click the like button and leave a comment about the warning signs you think might indicate a relationship is turning dangerous. Your engagement helps this important content reach more viewers, and your insights might help someone recognize danger in their own life. This discussion matters. Be part of it right now by commenting below. As we turn next to the details of that February night, remember that what happened at that gas station wasn't random chance. It was the devastating endpoint of a relationship dynamic that had been building toward violence, one deliberate decision at a time. Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. An ordinary evening at a gas station on St. Stephen's Road in Pritchard, Alabama, was about to become the scene of a carefully planned murder. The sequence of events that unfolded wasn't random. It wasn't opportunistic. Every element of what occurred that night shows deliberate planning and execution, a methodical approach designed specifically to ensure Destiny Watson would have no chance of escape. Let's reconstruct what happened based on surveillance footage, witness statements, and forensic evidence collected at the scene. Earlier that evening, Adrianna Gossett and Moses Richardson arrived at the gas station before Destiny Watson. This timing wasn't coincidental. They positioned themselves strategically, waiting for Watson to arrive. They chose this location knowing it was part of Watson's regular routine, a fact that underscores their familiarity with her movements and habits. The gas station security cameras captured what happened next. When Destiny pulled in to get gas, she had no reason to suspect danger. For her, this was just another stop in an ordinary day. But Gossett and Richardson had transformed this mundane location into a trap. Gossett, driving the vehicle, executed a precise maneuver, positioning their car to block Watson's vehicle, effectively cutting off any possibility of escape. The intentional nature of this action was later emphasized by investigators as clear evidence of premeditation. This wasn't a chance encounter. This was a planned ambush. With her car blocked, Destiny exited her vehicle. Perhaps she was confused. Perhaps she recognized the car and thought this was a confrontation that would involve words, not weapons. Whatever went through her mind in those moments, she couldn't have anticipated what came next. As Watson stood outside her car, Richardson opened fire with what investigators later described as a high-powered weapon consistent with an AR-style firearm. The gas station, a place typically filled with the mundane sounds of cars fueling and people going about their business, was suddenly filled with the explosive sound of gunfire. Multiple shots were fired. The precise number hasn't been publicly specified, but forensic teams later recovered numerous bullet casings scattered across the scene. Each casing represented a deliberate decision to end Destiny Watson's life. This wasn't a single impulsive shot. This was a sustained attack meant to ensure she had no chance of survival. Witness accounts described the scene as chaotic. Bystanders, caught in this unexpected eruption of violence, sought cover. Some would later provide crucial testimony about the sequence of events, including the deliberate way Watson's vehicle had been blocked and how she had been caught completely off guard. Within moments, the attack was over. Destiny Watson lay fatally wounded at the scene. Gossett and Richardson fled. They left behind not just a victim, but a wealth of evidence that would soon lead investigators directly to them. Police responded to emergency calls about the shooting and immediately secured the area. What they found was a scene rich with forensic evidence: the bullet casings, the surveillance footage, impressions from the vehicle Gossett and Richardson had used, and most importantly, clear visual documentation of both suspects. Forensic specialists worked methodically, collecting every piece of physical evidence. They gathered biological samples and fingerprints. They secured the surveillance footage that had captured the entire sequence of events. They documented the scene photographically, preserving every detail for the investigation that would follow. The gas station's cameras proved particularly valuable. In an age of ubiquitous surveillance, Gossett and Richardson had made a critical error. Their actions, from arrival to positioning the vehicle to the shooting itself, were all captured electronically, creating an indisputable record of their movements and actions. Ballistics experts later linked the recovered casings to the weapon type, which investigators determined was an AR-style firearm. The pattern of the casings, combined with witness accounts, allowed them to reconstruct precisely how the shooting had occurred, information that would prove crucial in building the case against both suspects. Physical evidence recovered from the scene included not just the bullet casings, but also DNA and fingerprint evidence. The forensic team collected samples from surfaces the suspects likely touched, from items they may have discarded, and from the area where their vehicle had been positioned. This biological evidence would later be matched to samples obtained from Gossett and Richardson after their arrest. What makes this case particularly notable from an investigative standpoint is the confluence of evidence types: digital surveillance, eyewitness accounts, and physical forensic materials, all pointing to the same conclusion. This wasn't a case built on circumstantial evidence or tenuous connections. This was a case built on multiple, reinforcing lines of evidence that collectively told one clear story. By the time investigators had processed the scene, they had already begun assembling a comprehensive picture of what had occurred. They knew who had committed the murder, they understood how it had been carried out, and they had compelling evidence showing it was not a spontaneous act, but a carefully planned execution. Now, to subscribe to True Crime Case Tates if you haven't already. Our channel focuses on detailed analysis of cases like this one, where understanding the evidence in the investigation helps us comprehend not just what happened, but how justice is pursued. Click subscribe now, and you'll be notified when our next in-depth case analysis is released. The transition from crime to consequence was remarkably swift in this case. Within 24 hours of Destiny Watson's murder, both Adrianna Gossett and Moses Richardson were in police custody, facing charges that would forever alter their lives. The investigation's rapid progress hinged on several key factors. First was the abundance of evidence left at the scene. The gas station's security camera system had captured the entire sequence of events in detail, from the strategic blocking of Watson's car to the moment Richardson opened fire. This visual documentation provided investigators with unambiguous identification of both suspects. Physical evidence strengthened the case further. Forensic teams had collected bullet casings that would later match the type of weapon used in the shooting. DNA samples and fingerprints recovered from the scene created additional links between the suspects and the crime. The comprehensive nature of this evidence allowed detectives to move forward with confidence. Witness statements added another layer of confirmation. Multiple people present at the gas station provided accounts that aligned perfectly with what the security cameras had recorded. These corroborating statements eliminated any potential for claiming misidentification or mistaken identity. On February 8, 2023, just one day after the murder, authorities arrested both Gossett and Richardson. Each was formally charged with intentional murder, reflecting the premeditated nature of the crime. The speed of these arrests demonstrated both the effectiveness of the investigation and the priority placed on removing these suspects from the community. The legal proceedings that followed revealed a significant point of controversy. While Moses Richardson was held without bond due to his probation violation from a previous offense, Adrianna Gossett received different treatment. The court granted Gossett a bond set at $250,000, with conditions including wearing an ankle monitor and strict orders prohibiting any contact with Watson's family. This bail decision became a focal point of public discussion. Many in the community questioned why someone charged with premeditated murder would be eligible for release before trial. The contrast between Richardson's detention and Gossett's potential release highlighted inconsistencies in how the justice system handles co-defendants in murder cases. The controversy sparked important conversations about Aniah's Law, a measure designed to deny bail for violent offenses. Named after Aniah Blanchard, a 19-year-old murdered in 2019, this Alabama law aims to keep dangerous individuals detained while awaiting trial. Watson's family and supporters argued that this case demonstrated precisely why such legal protections are necessary.
$150,000, they get that for breaking in somebody's house or a home invasion or whatever. So you gonna get them the same bond for killing somebody? That didn't seem good with me.
The arraignment process moved forward with formal proceedings. Richardson's arraignment was scheduled for February 15, 2023, while Gossett faced the court in the days immediately following her arrest. During these hearings, attorneys presented initial arguments about evidence admissibility and bail conditions. Pre-trial motions added complexity to the legal landscape. The prosecution emphasized the overwhelming evidence pointing to premeditation, while defense attorneys raised questions about evidence handling and potential gaps in witness accounts. These motions represent standard legal strategy, but in a case with such abundant evidence, they faced significant challenges. Law enforcement officials provided detailed testimony during preliminary hearings. They explained the comprehensive process of collecting and analyzing evidence, emphasizing the methodical approach that had quickly identified both suspects. Forensic experts outlined their findings, highlighting the statistical significance of DNA matches and other physical evidence. Family members of Destiny Watson also provided powerful testimony about the impact of her loss. Their emotional accounts underscored the human toll of this crime and reinforced community demands for justice. As of this report, the trial remains in progress, with no final verdict or sentencing. The case continues to move through the legal system, with both defendants facing potential life sentences if convicted of intentional murder. What this phase of the case reveals is how justice operates when evidence is abundant and clear. The quick arrests, the serious charges, and the ongoing legal proceedings demonstrate a system responding decisively to violence. Yet the bail controversy also highlights the challenging questions our society continues to face about how we balance the rights of the accused with the safety of the community. The murder of Destiny Watson left a void that can never be filled. For her family, the loss goes beyond the legal proceedings and media attention. It's personal, permanent, and profound. In the days following her death, Destiny's family gathered to remember not how she died, but how she lived. They spoke of her warm personality, her humor that could transform any room, and her dedication to caring for others as a CNA. Her cousin Gladys Douglas's description of Destiny as the sweetest cousin became a touchstone for those who knew her, a simple phrase that captured her essence. These private moments of grief soon transformed into public remembrance. Vigils held in Mobile County brought together not just family but friends, colleagues, and community members who had been touched by Destiny's life or moved by the circumstances of her death. Candles illuminated faces of people united in mourning a young woman whose potential would never be realized. The community response extended beyond symbolic gestures. Support networks formed to assist the Watson family with funeral expenses and emotional support. Healthcare workers, Destiny's professional peers, were particularly affected, many speaking about the loss of a colleague who exemplified the compassionate care they all strived to provide. What emerged from this collective grief was something powerful: advocacy. Destiny's family channeled their pain into purpose, becoming vocal proponents for stricter application of Aniah's Law in Alabama, named after another young woman whose life was cut short by violence. This legislation aims to deny bail to those charged with violent crimes. The family's argument was clear and compelling. Had the law been applied more stringently, previous offenders like Richardson might have remained in custody for earlier violations, potentially preventing future violence. They pointed to the controversial bail conditions offered to Gossett as evidence that the system still contained dangerous gaps. This advocacy wasn't abstract or theoretical, it was deeply personal. Every speech, every interview, every public appearance by Watson's family carried the weight of their loss and the urgency of their cause. They transformed their private pain into public purpose, determined that Destiny's death would lead to meaningful change. Local legislators and community leaders took notice. Discussions about bail reform, victim protection, and preventative measures gained new momentum. Policy meetings that might once have been sparsely attended now drew crowds of concerned citizens, many wearing ribbons or badges in Destiny's memory. The case also prompted renewed attention to forensic and investigative resources. Community forums highlighted how crucial those first hours of evidence collection had been in securing arrests, leading to calls for sustained investment in these critical services. Perhaps most significantly, Destiny's case changed local perspectives on relationship violence. Community organizations developed new educational programs focusing on warning signs and intervention strategies. The tragic progression from jealousy to murder became a powerful teaching tool, potentially saving lives by helping others recognize dangerous patterns before they escalate to violence. Memorial initiatives emerged to preserve Destiny's legacy and values. Scholarship funds for aspiring nurses, community health awareness campaigns, volunteer groups dedicated to supporting victims of violence. Each initiative reflected some aspect of who Destiny was: her compassion, her dedication to healthcare, her fundamental belief in helping others. The true measure of justice extends beyond court verdicts and sentences. It includes how a community responds, what changes are implemented, and whether lessons are learned. By this standard, the response to Destiny Watson's murder represents both the community's capacity for compassion and its commitment to preventing future tragedies. As we conclude this analysis of Destiny Watson's life and death, I ask you to take 3 specific actions. First, subscribe to True Crime Case Tapes if you haven't already. Each case we examine contains lessons that might save lives. Second, share this video with someone who works in healthcare or law enforcement, the very fields that intersected in Destiny's life and in the aftermath of her death. Finally, take a moment to comment below with one change you believe would make your community safer from relationship violence. Your insight might inspire others and contribute to the ongoing conversation about prevention and protection. Destiny Watson was more than a victim. She was a caregiver, a daughter, a cousin, a friend, and a young woman with dreams of becoming a nurse. By remembering her life as well as her death, we honor her legacy and reinforce the fundamental value of every human life cut short by violence.